Okay, so
There we go.
all right, let's do this.
You guys are all set.
All right, thanks, Scott.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. Well, so good morning, everybody. Thanks for being on the call. Hope we've got something that may be of use to everybody. And as usual, I'd like to just talk about my little mantra first, which is the slaughterhouse of failure is not in my destiny. I will persist until I succeed. Og Mandino. And as I always say, that's something we've got to tattoo on our foreheads and look in the mirror every morning. And every time we feel a little low about something, we should remember that the slaughterhouse of failure is not in my destiny. So today we're going to continue what we were talking about. And today we're going to talk about the gold standard and deliberate practice. And so we've got it's a continuation of the first part, which is Peak by Anders Ericsson and Robert Poole. So Dan, if you want to start, then we'll do it together.
Yeah, so basically today we're just going to expand on what we talked about last week. And if you'll remember, we talked last week about, the right sort of practice carried out over a sufficient period of time leads to improvement. Nothing else. There's no such thing as natural talent. It's just practice and practicing the correct way. And Vince Lombardi had a quote, that practice does not make perfect. Only perfect practice makes perfect, right? So it's the way in which you practice these things. It's not just doing them for the sake of doing them, setting goals for the sake of setting goals. You need to be deliberate in those actions. And anybody can improve. It's just how much time you spend employing these different forms of practice. And deliberate practice is the gold standard, as Lawrence mentioned. There's no shortcut. The shortcut to practicing is practicing, but you have to practice the right way. So want to get into a little bit about the gold standard of deliberate practice and what is deliberate practice. Deliberate practice is better than purposeful practice or naive practice, because you're focusing down on what you're practicing. If you know anything about karate and karate schools and how they teach karate, they teach it in a very deliberate manner, right? They teach you defensive techniques. They teach you offensive techniques. They have different goals in mind. They have, white belts, blue belts, green belts, black belts. Your ultimate goal is black belt. And to get there, you have to have a set of goals and you have to practice. And they have these things called katas, which are, it's basically a choreographed set of moves that they use to practice these things, and they can be practiced individually. And it's all about deliberate practice, right? They're practicing very intentionally and very deliberately to become experts in their craft, right? And one of the things that we talked about last week, and we're going to talk a little bit about more this week, is how do you do that? One of the ways is that you look towards the experts in whatever you're doing and see what they're doing and try and replicate that or expand on that, right? And in karate, they have teachers and they're called masters because they've already, quote unquote, mastered whatever, up to the level of whatever belt they're at, right? And so they have all these students that are being taught by the master how to do these specific things. With the ultimate goal of them becoming a black belt or a master or reaching the next belt that they need to reach to attain that goal.
Well, of course, the thing is, though, initially you have in the practice, you've got to be in the zone. And in the zone is where you are 100% focused on what you're doing. And it's a totally deliberate thing. You've got to understand that that's all there is in life at that particular moment, is that destination where you're going to. You want to achieve that particular goal. You want to achieve that particular outcome, and you're in the zone of that game or of the business or whatever we're doing. But we've got to be in the zone without distraction, and it's got to be a totally deliberate thing. And as Dan said, we're not, it's not just about practicing blindly and, doing the same thing over and over again, unless you introspect and you analyze and you dissect and you see what it is we did well, what it is we didn't do so well, and continue to improve what we're doing. Because if we don't, we're just going to be going over and over and over again. And in the case of doing something that's not so well, it's like saying, if you're in a hole, stop digging, because you're not going to get out of it. You've got to be very, very deliberate and have the total intention of what you're doing, but deliberate and in the zone, and analyze. And it's not comfortable, come out of the comfort zone when you're not doing so well, and you think you've got to change, you've got to modify, or somebody, or your master, like Dan is saying, or your teacher, or your coach, or whoever it is, or your buddy in the business is saying, you really screwed up on that thing. You've got to really improve on that. It's not comfortable to be told that. It's not comfortable to feel like you didn't really, you thought you were doing a good job. We think we're doing a great job. And then suddenly somebody says, that was a mess. What? And then we've got to, man up, or I don't know if that's correct, politically correct anymore, man up or woman up or whatever, gender up. But we've got to get up and face up to getting better and improving. And it's the small things that we continually tweak. And it's the observer that will help us as well.
Yeah, and what's important about that is you need to have the right person, right? You need to have somebody that you respect. Find somebody on your team or somebody outside of your team. Deliberate practice doesn't have to be practiced all the time. Set aside a half an hour a day or an hour a day to practice this. Look at the things that you're not doing right, or you haven't done right in the past, but you've set a goal to change how you're doing things, and focus on improving those skills, right? We all have strengths, we have weaknesses. Look to what your weaknesses are and try to improve on those. As Lawrence mentioned, it's, being taken outside your comfort zone. Nobody wants to admit that they have weaknesses, right? But, in order to improve and master something, you have to look at your weaknesses and really, really focus deliberately on improving those. And so, find an expert performer in this business or in any facet of your life, and see what they're doing and how they tackle those things, and then what motivates them to improve them. We have different pin titles in this business. We talked about that last week. Those can be your goals. How are you going to reach those? What are you doing that's working? What are you doing that's not working? Focus on those things that aren't working and really, really strive to improve those with intention and deliberate practice, right? This isn't a business that you get into and you're going to be an expert right away. This is completely different than anything I've done. I mean, I've been in sales for 25 years, but this is a completely different ballgame. I've had to look at my strategies and look at my messaging and, all of those things that I've had to look at and do them differently to be successful in this business. And you don't want to bite these off in big, huge chunks. You can baby step. You pick one or two easier ones, focus on those, right? And then start building up from there, baby step to get there. And that's what they do in karate. They're baby stepping, right? They're learning from the very beginning, the basic skills, and then they get to more advanced skills, and then into the expert skills. So you're not expected to know all these things or jump right in and tackle the really hard things right away. Spend a half an hour a day just tackling little tiny wins. And I think this goes back to Scott's talk earlier in the week about the rule of three. Do these things using that concept. Break it up into three chunks, three goals that you want to meet for that day, or during that deliberate practice session. You can break it down that way. But the rule of three is basically just what we're talking about. Being deliberate. You need to focus on three things you want to do that day, three things for the week, three things for the month, three things for the year. But don't ever try and focus on more than three things. And all of these three things should be synergistic to meet your ultimate goal.
If you do many things, you can improve, but it's an overall improvement, and that's mediocrity. You don't want to just improve in a mediocre way. You want to excel at what you're doing, and to do that, select, as Dan just said, and Scott said, a couple of things, three things at the most, and focus on those three and excel at those three. So, to be able to really be good at what we do, I continue to come back to this uncomfortable area, out of the comfort zone. We talk about things like which used to be like cold calls in the rain, in the snow, where we've got to learn to embrace a rejection. That's one of the things we've got to learn to do, is to embrace rejection. That's one of the improvements that we can make, but we've got to focus on. We've got to be an expert at embracing rejection. Why? Because every person we talk to will have some kind of rejection about something, whether it's, the time, or it's a MLM, or it's a money, or whatever they've got. But we've got to be able to be absolutely in the zone to be able to answer those and to dispel any fears they have, which it's fear, false evidence appearing real, to dispel the fears they have and be good at what we're doing, and embracing rejection. That's one of them. So the three things we need to do, but one of them, in my opinion, is absolutely that particular one of rejection.
Yeah, and rejection can be a form of feedback. Feedback is a big part of this deliberate practice, and you need to get feedback to help improve what you're doing, right? Lawrence and I talk, on our Tuesday night team calls. We usually talk after the call. After these calls, we usually chat for a little bit. What can we do differently? How can we improve these calls? And it's not about being an expert in deliberate practice. You just need to get as close to deliberate practice as possible, right? We're not, we don't need to be experts at this. We just need to practice and try to get as close to practicing deliberately as we can, right? And so there's a bunch of different ways that you can go about this. We already talked about identifying expert performers, right? See what they're doing. What are they doing differently? Have them look at what you're doing and maybe provide some feedback. That's going to help you get closer to practicing more deliberately, because you know what to focus on then. Figure out what they do that makes them so good. Figure out what they do different. The training methods that help them get there. The books that they're reading on the topic, and then come up with training techniques that allow you to do it too, right? You just look at what they're doing, and what they're doing may not 100% work for you. So you may need to alter it a little bit to work for you. And that's okay. You just need to, have that goal in mind. And so I practice deliberately, half an hour every day on I write down my goals the evening before. I think about them a little bit. And then in the morning, I usually get up, I'll meditate for a little while to get focused, and then I'll practice deliberately for a little while.
Yeah. So, when we look at successful people, first of all, one of the best things we can do is hello? One of the best things we can do is surround ourselves with people more capable or better than us, because that's where we can learn from. And when we look at people who excel at what they're doing, and we see what they do and how they do it, one of the things we need to also see is their why. Why are they doing that? What is their motivation? What is our motivation? because eventually it's all about mindset. It's all about how we think. How do they think? Why do they think in that way? What makes them so successful? What makes them excel at what they're doing? It's the practice, yes, but it's the intentional practice and so on. But the why, the motivation. This is something we've always got to keep in our minds, what the motivation is, and discuss that with our mentor, our team members, our partners, our group, because it's that way where we can go to those painful areas where we're slacking or where we're lacking or we're deficient, and that's the way we can tweak that and improve those.
Yeah, and focusing on those relevant skills, right? Focusing on the skills that they've taught themselves, that somebody taught them, and then instead of how do we present that relevant knowledge, focus on what that relevant skill is and what that relevant knowledge is, not how on the knowledge itself. Skill can sometimes be more useful than knowledge. What you're able to do, not what you know, right? Just because you can do more doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be better or that you're more productive than somebody else, because there's really, you have to have a way to measure your productivity. And if you don't have a way to measure your productivity, and you can't look back at it and say, I met this goal or that goal, or I got better at this or didn't get better at this, then you're just spinning your wheels and you're not practicing deliberately, right? There's no way to practice deliberately unless you have a way to measure, whether you're seeing a result. And so, whatever you're doing, focus on it. Don't just engage in mindless repetition. We talked about that last week. Don't let these outside influences sully what you're trying to do. Your focus. Don't let thinking about COVID, the election, all these different things that we have going on, those are all distractions. Leave those distractions out of deliberate practice, get more focused and be more intentional, and you're going to see some improvement.
And also, no matter how much knowledge we have, knowledge is great, but that's just the very, very, very beginning, because we have to learn how to impart that knowledge. We have to be able to learn to communicate that. We have to be able to put that knowledge into our own way of describing it. And for example, people say, well, what is the, give me the script that I should use. What are the scripts? How should I use this? No, the script is just a base. It's an outline. But then you've got to take that information or that knowledge or that whatever you've learned and put it into your own words with your own feelings and your own emotion, and be able to impart that in a very in as well as system as well a way as you can. So communication is very, very important, and it's important to be able to use it with your own words. Use the information in your own words with your own emotion, with your own passion. So the skills that we have, we develop the skills, but the knowledge we have is just the base, and we've got to be able to hone in on those, and that's what makes us improve.
Yeah, it's figuring out what those skills are that you need to improve. You have to keep the reasons for doing those high, so that it's not easy to quit what you're doing. You need to just maintain focus, intention, deliberate purpose, and to do that, like I mentioned, you limit those sessions to a half an hour at the most, right? It's hard to be hyper focused for more than that. And I like to do that in the morning because I find that it's easier for me to be focused in the morning before I have too many distractions. So I think that's all we have for today. It's a 9:50. We're going to leave some time open for questions. One quick thing on that is, to Lawrence's point is, you can share these things with your team members, and then there's some accountability as well. And it's easier, sometimes easier to do these things in a group to stay focused. And you can do these with your group to stay focused on your team goals.
And actually, just the three things to focus on this case is to practice the skill without a teacher or with a teacher. Focus, feedback, fix it. That's basically what it is. But you've got to keep on fixing and getting feedback, and it's based on the focus. So yeah, anybody got any questions? Be delighted to try and answer them. And
so Martin had a question in the chat about what exactly, when I practice, what exactly do I mean by that? And what do you do for deliberate practice? So I can give you an example not related to this business. So when I was growing up and I was playing soccer, we had practice every day, and we'd practice the same things over and over. But when I'd get home, I would really concentrate on working on my foot skills. So I would practice juggling the ball every night. And that was very deliberate practice. I wanted to get better at controlling the ball with my feet. And, I got to a point where I could do 5,000 juggles without dropping the ball. That was very focused, very intentional, very deliberate. And there's ways to do that in this business as well. You need to be focused on, how you're going to try to recruit people into this business, and then, being focused and deliberate about practicing how you're going to talk to folks about this business, right? It's a skill. It's not it's not something that's innate. It needs to be developed. And, I do a lot of calls with my team members, and I kind of do the presentations, but at some point they need to start doing the presentations themselves. And after about a month, I start asking them to kind of run through the presentations, and, it doesn't go well sometimes the first or second time, and then we talk about how they can get the point across more effectively. And then it's deliberately practicing that presentation, right? Practice, change the verbiage. What words are you saying that maybe aren't getting the point across or are confusing what we're talking about, confusing people? Just one simple word sometimes can change the meaning of everything. So you need to be looking at exactly how you're saying things, so that it's going to make sense and not create more confusion, because then that's just going to create more work for you. Did that answer your question, Martin? You may have jumped.
Thank you very much.
Yep, absolutely. Any other questions? Okay.
other questions? Anybody? Don't be shy. Got a couple of minutes if you like. We're here as long as you like.
So next week, we're going to get into, we're kind of expand on this and talk a little bit about the power of habit and how you create these habits, and to meet your goals, and, make these things so they're more subconscious. When you're just practicing them, they're conscious, right? Because they have to be in your mind for you to be actually practicing them. And so what the ultimate goal is to get them to a point where, once you've perfected that, or as close to perfection as you can, you want to create them as habits. You want them to just kind of happen without you having to think about it. So next week, we're going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay.
So if there aren't any additional questions.
Sometimes.
One more.
And then tell them 1099, they back off. Well, this is actually a nice one. I love this. So the 1099 issue is actually a strength we've got, because you build up to that. In my opinion, my questions from the beginning are: do you have any desire to have your own business? Are you an entrepreneur? Would you like to have your own business? And most people will say yes. And then say, well, do you know what it means to have your own business? It means that you believe in yourself. You've got to absolutely know what you're doing. And the 1099, our business is 1099, and this is the best part about it. And that's why I'm in it, because I will never be paid for what I'm worth if I work for someone in a job, J-O-B, just over broke. So for me, the attraction is a 1099 where I produce and the results will be according to my work ethic and what I do. So not everybody is going to embrace 1099 because not everybody has that same work ethic. But if you work for yourself and you know that you are accountable to yourself, you are in control. And by being in control, you have the freedom to be able to do exactly what you want. Whereas if you're in a job, you're told what to do, you've got a theoretical, because it's not real, a theoretical security while you have it of some kind of insurances and things like that, and a salary. But we've seen now that the stability of jobs that are W-2s are in jeopardy. And it's a much more sound thinking to be able to build a career for yourself. And that is with a 1099, if you're in the right vehicle. And this is what makes this attractive. We're in a Rolls Royce with a Ferrari engine, backed by the science, the technology, innovation, the passport to the future. That's what makes so attractive. And that's why I'm wholly embracing a 1099 in this company, in this case, with this technology. Because I'd much rather have that than be told what to do and never paid what I'm worth, and have the fear that at any moment I could be let go for whatever invented reasons they have, like, outsizing and downsizing and outsourcing and all this kind of stuff. So the 1099 is a very big attraction for me, and it's an attraction for anybody who would like to understand that their future is in their hands, not in somebody else's hands.
I think you need to challenge these folks a little bit as well. Lawrence asks 3 great questions. Who are you? How well do you know yourself? And what do you want? Right? And one of the things that I always talk to reps about, if they're a medical device rep, is I challenge them on how good their relationships are, how successful have they been, because they're all going to pound on their chest to tell you how great they are. But ask them to put their money where their mouth is. If you're so great, if your relationships are so strong, if you're such a fantastic salesperson, then why haven't you taken the risk to work for yourself and have control over, your destiny, how much money you can make, no limitations on revenue. It's all how much work you put in. Some people are just afraid of working hard. And I've talked about this before, that, 95% of sales reps in the medical device industry don't sell anything. There's 5% of the people are the ones that are out there really working hard, growing the business. The rest are just babysitting business. They're just resting on their laurels. Somebody else, I did that in my, career. I moved from territory to territory, building the business from $500,000 to a couple of million. And then I'd turn it over to somebody else who said they were a sales rep. They had the sales rep title, but all they did was babysit the business that I grew. And they got happy and fat, and they were, making money off of what I had done just by showing up and babysitting the business. So a lot of people in that industry, from what I know and what I've seen and from what I've found, aren't true salespeople. And so that's what they're looking for. They're looking for a W-2 with benefits, and because it's safe. That's what a lot of people want. They want that safety net.
Okay. Well, that's right. We're looking for 5% who really want self-reliance rather than the illusion. Yeah, people dream, but put that dream into reality. It takes courage. Okay, thank you very much. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everybody, for being here. Thanks, Scott. Thank you. And same time, same place next week. Don't forget Monday to listen to Scott at 9:30, same time, same place. And then Wednesday, Wendy and
Ken.
Kent.
How can you forget Ken?
Wendy and Ken. So blessings to everybody. Have a good weekend.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank
Have
you,
a great one.
Lawrence. Thank you, Dan.